Welcome to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Ranked by the International Association of Awesome Podcasts as the best podcast in the history of podcasts. Wait, is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. Anyway, seeking to shine a light on all that is good in an ever-darkening world of negativity. Here's your host, Clint Swindall.
Hey everybody, I'm Clint Swindall, and this is the Tell Me Something Good podcast, the show that is all about creating a more positive world by overcoming negativity. It is my goal each episode to engage your mind, encourage your heart, or enlighten your soul. I am happy you're here. This is episode number 16 of the Tell Me Something Good podcast, brought to you by Nutty Foods, a family-owned and operated company striving to provide healthier snack options, ones that are approved by moms and loved by kids. I introduced this new sponsor to you last week for the very first time, and I'm excited to be sharing them again. We all like a good snack, particularly yours truly, and we need some snacks that are actually good for us, and Nutty Foods provides just that. They are the home of Chocolata, these crazy good chocolate spreads. They make their products in small batches, and they're dedicated to providing the healthiest and most delicious chocolate spreads available. If you're looking for a healthier, keto-friendly snack option for you and your family, check them out at nuttyfoods.com. Well, my friends, here we are, halfway through 2020. It's halftime. It's an opportunity to look back at the first half of the year to see what adjustments we need to make for the second half. The first step in that process for many people who set goals for the year is to look back to the plans they had on January 1st, one of my favorite days of the year. With a new year comes a fresh start. While we can be completely dissatisfied with our life on December 31st, the beginning of the year marks the beginning of a new race. Yep, just one single day. It's an opportunity to start with a clean slate, with shiny new goals to take our lives to a whole new level. Then life gets in the way. Stress and pressures of daily life move us back into our comfort zone, far from our fresh start. In fact, research shows many of those goals we set are abandoned before we get out of January. Too often we allow excuses to push us even farther from our fresh start. I'll start back on my diet after the weekend, or I'll volunteer my time as soon as I can get caught up this month, or I'll get the family back in church as soon as summer's over, or I'll start saving money as soon as we make this one last purchase. For a lot of people, the global pandemic of 2020 has caused many goals and aspirations to just be cast aside. In their place became survival. I'm guessing there were restaurant owners around the world planning to have the biggest year ever with plans for growth and change. And now many are just trying to figure out how to keep their doors open to the other side of the pandemic. Sadly, small business owners in many industries, the backbone of the American economy, are wondering about their future while facing a virus with behaviors we can't predict. These are all realities we face as a nation and world. As we settle into halftime, we see challenges around us, no doubt. The ongoing pandemic and recent surges in the South, social unrest, stock market volatility, economic disaster, murder hornets, the 17-year cicada invasion, and a presidential election to top it all off. Wow, this has been without question one eventful and crazy year. Life throws us all kinds of crud, and when people are forced to face challenges they didn't expect, plans are put on hold, goals are put on hold, lives are put on hold. In the midst of all the crazy that is going on in the world, it's time to make some adjustments to ensure we get back to the good. And what an appropriate time. After all, it's halftime. Teams go into locker rooms at halftime to take a look at the first half to determine changes for the second half. They do this because the first half didn't go exactly as planned. They don't quit if they're behind, and if they're smart, they don't just continue with the same plan. No, they adjust, and that's exactly what needs to happen for us all as we face halftime of 2020. And we must do one of two things. If your business or personal plans were not negatively impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, good for you. Look, there are some industries that have grown significantly since they happen to provide a product or service that has been needed. Again, good for you. As you face halftime, your adjustments are how to manage the growth and expand your business in a way you probably had not anticipated on January 1st, 2020. And if you were like most people and experienced a negative impact by the coronavirus pandemic, it may be time to completely rewrite your plan for the second half. I happen to be in that category because I work in an industry that was decimated by the coronavirus. You see, much of my company's work is in the live presentation business, traveling from conference to conference, speaking to large groups of people. Those conferences were canceled overnight with the arrival of the virus, impacting everyone in that industry: hotels, caterers, event planners, entertainers, audiovisual companies, Uber drivers, restaurants, the guy that shines shoes in the lobby, and yes, speakers who stand on the stage sharing their knowledge. While it is an industry that was devastated overnight, it is an industry that will come back. In the meantime, there are two obvious options. One, curl up in a ball and wait for everything to get back to normal. Or two, adjust. It's not my personality to curl up in a ball and wait, and I've embraced the challenge of creating new ways of delivering value. From the development of online training tools and coaching programs to new virtual products and programs, it's all become a part of our adjustments for a different second half. What we weren't willing to do was sit around and wait to see what happens, and you can't either, regardless of your scenario. Instead, it's an opportunity to use this halftime for some serious introspection. It's an opportunity to examine where you are and where you want to be. As you consider what you want to do during halftime, whether your opportunities have grown or diminished during the first half of 2020, here are a couple things I encourage you to do. 1. Spend some time reflecting. Reflect on the enhancements you wanted to make in your life at the beginning of the year. And I'm not talking about the financial or business enhancements. I'm talking about the personal goals. Lose weight, stop smoking, eat better, whatever it might have been. The coronavirus pandemic should not have impacted those things. If you've achieved them, celebrate your accomplishment. If you've made progress, stay on track. But if you've allowed anything to become an excuse for getting you off track, you owe it to yourself and those you care about to get back on track. So take the time to reflect on where you are and where you want to be. And 2, abandon the excuses. At this point, recommit to making your goals a reality and abandon the excuses. The pandemic has turned everything upside down, or the change in my routine has made it impossible to keep to my plan, or work has been crazy, or homeschooling my kids has been so stressful, or I've just been so busy, are some of the most common excuses I've been hearing. The excuse doesn't matter. Just recommit to making it happen. Look, most people don't need much of an excuse to knock them off track, and the pandemic has made for an easily justifiable excuse for abandoning personal and professional goals. Don't allow yourself to fall in that pit of mediocrity. If you allowed the distractions of the pandemic to knock you off track, use it now as an excuse to get back to where you need to be. On January 1st of 2020, there were many things I had no idea I would see this year. I never dreamed I would see everyone wearing a face mask just to interact in public. I never dreamed I would see handshakes and hugs replaced with elbow bumps. I never dreamed I would see empty stadiums at a time of year they should be filled with graduations and sporting events. These are things the pandemic has done to us. And while many people choose to see what the pandemic has done to us, I choose to see what it has done for us. I've seen people who have taught themselves to adapt in a very short period of time. I've seen people who have taught themselves to survive in a world where 6 months ago they thought they were going to thrive. I've seen people make sacrifices for themselves and their employees like never before. Regardless of the impact this pandemic has had on you, it is my hope that you use this halftime break to get set for the second half of the year, the opportunity to choose your new direction. If you have been brave enough to turn on a television lately or pull up news on your smart devices, you probably noticed there's a lot of negative stuff out there. It's time for some good news in this segment called
Good News from Around the World.
This heartwarming story began unfolding on Father's Day when some good Samaritans got creative so they could get an elderly man out of the heat. The 70-year-old was pushing a cart around a Chicago neighborhood. Hard work for anyone on a hot summer day. But now, thanks to some nice customers and the kindness that went viral, he may finally have the opportunity to enjoy retirement. Rosario Del Real works harder than many folks half his age. Until this month, he had been working as a carpenter from home. Since an injury forced him to take a break from his profession, he has pushed a refrigerator cart through the streets of Chicago, selling paletas, Mexican-style ice pops, to neighbors. Don Rosario, as he is affectionately known, was born in Mexico and wears his traditional vaquero suit, cowboy hat, and pitted belt wherever he sells his frozen treats. It may have been a holiday for dads across the U.S., but for Don Rosario it was another day at the office, pushing his cart around the neighborhood. Oscar Gonzalez and his friend Victor Dominguez were hosting a Father's Day barbecue for their families and invited the paleta salesman to join them. Everyone bonded very quickly, and before long, they decided to buy all of the paletas in Don Rosario's cart so that he could go home and rest. One of their friends recorded a video of the heartwarming sale and posted it on the social sharing app TikTok. And when the video went viral, the family harnessed the publicity and set up a fundraiser to help the immigrant retire. The initial goal was to raise $10,000 for their new friend, but generous strangers have contributed more than $62,000 to the GoFundMe campaign so far. Even before learning that his new friends had collected a huge sum for his retirement, Don Rosario says he was moved to tears by their generosity that day. Even before learning that his new friends had collected a huge sum for his retirement, Don Rosario says he was moved to tears by their generosity that day, even though he is just grateful to have the opportunity to work. "I don't like to sit at home doing nothing and without a purpose," he told the Chicago Tribune, "but I don't have enough to ever be able to thank those who have done this for me. It has made me so happy." Don Rosario first came to the United States in 1969, before finally becoming a citizen in 1979. He says that when he first came to the country, his family was so poor that his only wish was for them to be able to eat one full meal every day. After picking produce in California for a number of years, he worked on ranches and in factories in Texas and Oregon. Finally, he was able to settle in Chicago and buy a home, where he and his wife raised their 3 children on the southeast side. He finally finished paying off the house in 2015. Don Rosario says he plans to return to Mexico someday. When he gets there, the first item on his agenda is to visit the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe to thank God for how so many strangers have been such a blessing to him in recent weeks. Even though he can certainly relax and enjoy his retirement now, he says he will keep working because it brings him so much satisfaction. And then there's this. A pair of new studies reveals a silver lining amid the COVID gloom, and that is that many fathers feel closer to their kids during the pandemic and want to create a new normal going forward. The studies, released as part of Canadian Men's Health Week, were conducted in May on behalf of the nonprofit Canadian Men's Health Foundation. The first survey asked 1,019 Canadian fathers about the impact of the COVID lockdown on their roles as fathers. Even though families have faced stressors and challenges with COVID-19, we recognize that fathers have been granted a golden opportunity to take time to slow down and connect with their children, said Canadian Health Minister Adrian Dix. Many parents work full-time and commute, and when that is taken away, they have more opportunities for togetherness, like a game of catch or going for a hike. Men's health is impacted by their living situations, and getting a little more physical activity with their kids is a little thing that makes a big difference. We can learn from this pandemic in more ways than we think. During lockdown, 40% of the respondents felt COVID-19 has had a positive impact on their role as a father. 52% are more aware of their importance as a father, and 60% felt closer to their children. Half of those surveyed have already decided to be more engaged as a father in the future. According to the study, almost 2/3 of fathers have been providing companionship to their children more often during lockdown, and almost half plan to continue doing so as restrictions are lifted. Likewise, 56% have been providing guidance to their children more often, with 46% planning to continue doing that as well. I've been off work since March and it's been stressful, but the upside is I've been able to spend a lot more time with my daughter, said Dale Watson of Burnaby, British Columbia. I'm a professional chef and I've been spending time in the kitchen at home teaching my kids how to cook. We're also sitting down as a family and eating together, which was something that couldn't happen very often when I was working. I'm grateful for the extra time I have with my family. Nick Black, managing partner at Intentions Consulting, said fathers' increased engagement can take many forms. One tangible way the study sees dads engaging is that 64% are eating more meals with their children. Sharing meals can provide an important opportunity for family connection, says Black. There is considerable evidence that eating meals together can have a positive impact on kids' mental health, nutritional choices, school performance, and can even reduce the incidence of drug and alcohol use. As a follow-up to the online survey, the Men's Initiative at UBC conducted virtual focus groups with 45 fathers from across Canada. Many fathers described a hectic family dynamic prior to COVID, with busy lives focused on long work days with commuting, eating on the run, and catering to children's schedules. With the sports, extracurricular, and social activities, the family members experienced lives that were lived in parallel with each other. As the pandemic evolves, fathers have expressed concern that they will experience a tension between shifting back to the old normal and a desire to create a new normal going forward. We know the active and positive presence of fathers in their children's lives has a positive effect on those children's mental and physical well-being and reduces the frequency of their negative behaviors, noted Dr. David Keel, a UBC professor of medicine and a co-founder of TMI. If the COVID-19 lockdown accelerates the movement of dads to be more engaged with their children, that could be a lasting benefit from a tragic public health crisis. It is clear, however, that men realize it will be a challenge to continue spending quality time with their families once the daily stresses of commuting and working long hours are reintroduced to their lives. In a world in desperate need of strong father figures in their children's lives, that's some pretty good news. And that, my friends, is some good news from around the world. This past week, I got a good question from a listener that sort of ties to everything we've been dealing with lately, and I thought I would share it here in this segment called
Ask Clint Anything. 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 Anything.
Here was the question. At the end of every episode of your podcast, you say that you'll be praying for God to bless us in big ways. I'm curious, throughout all of this coronavirus mess, what role has faith played in your life? Interesting question. First of all, I just want to say how cool it is to be able to talk openly about my faith on this podcast. When I stand on a stage talking for a client, I have to be careful because not everyone shares my faith and the client hasn't brought me in for that purpose in a world where there are so many faiths. While I say enough things in my presentations that make it clear that faith is important to me, I am respectful that not everyone agrees with me. However, on my podcast, I can say anything I want without a concern in the world. While I never want to lose a listener, I'll take that risk in order to be transparent about who I am, and more importantly, whose I am. And second, to answer your question, faith has played a huge role in my life throughout this coronavirus mess. You see, in my life, I choose faith over fear. Anytime I get overly concerned about something, I lean into my faith. I have no doubt there is a purpose for everything, even when I can't see it. Well, particularly when I can't see it. The Bible tells me I shouldn't worry about anything. And man, I wish I was better at that. While we think worrying makes us feel better, it just makes it worse and does nothing to impact the outcome. While I know some people feel God has disappeared in the middle of this crisis and is nowhere to be found, I have no doubt He's right in the middle of it, weaving together the good stuff. We may not see it until we get far enough from it to look back and have it come into focus. My faith tells me the best is yet to come. All right, everybody, we are about to wrap up. Before I end this episode with a challenge, I want to remind you that this episode of Tell Me Something Good has been brought to you by Nutty Foods, a family-owned and operated company striving to provide healthier snack options, ones that are approved by moms and loved by kids. We've probably all had our fair share of snacks during the pandemic, and we can all use some healthier options. Nutty Foods provides that healthier option. If you're looking for a good, keto-friendly snack option for you and your family, check them out at nuttyfoodswithaz.com. And now the challenge. Before you come back for the next episode, I challenge you to think about your halftime. I want you to think about the personal goals you had for yourself at the beginning of the year that should not have been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. Then I want you to recommit to getting back on track for the remaining 6 months of the year. And whether your professional life has been impacted positively or negatively, I want you to refocus for the next 6 months. Create a new plan, one that you can work toward every day. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Tell Me Something Good podcast. I sure hope you'll join us again next week. In the meantime, be listening for our special episode of Champagne Friday each Friday morning. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you can, leave me a rating and review. Your support can help someone else as we work to spread positivity to the world. And if you have a question for the podcast, you want to share your good stuff, or need to find the links to join us on social media, jump over to findthegoodinlife.com. You'll find all you need right there on the front page. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'll be praying for God to bless you in mighty ways. Now, get out there and love on somebody.
You've been listening to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. The content of the podcast is meant to engage, encourage, and enlighten you to become more positive. It's not meant to diagnose, treat, or replace the personalized care provided by a trained professional. If you're struggling with depression or mental health issues, please reach out to a counselor for diagnosis and treatment. Until next time, be positive, people.